Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Sustainability Forward, our podcast. Today, we have for you a brief discussion on the energy outlook released by the International Energy Agency, IEA, for this particular year. And with me to do that is my co host, Carmine.
Thank you, Rishi. Welcome, everybody. Yes, this is a very interesting topic. So today we are talking about this new energy outlook for 2023 released by the International Energy Agency. So this is a Paris-based autonomous intergovernmental organization, and every year they release in-depth analysis with some strategic insight into every aspect of the global energy system. So we thought it could be a very good episode today to try to summarize what this new report, this new outlook is telling us. Let's say, first of all, it's a kind of reference in the energy world. So there is a lot of work to be done. It's a very extensive report. It's probably more than 300 pages long. And today we're trying to summarize that, but also looking at the three dimensions that are redefining energy today. So the security part, the economics of energy, and also the sustainability angle. So really trying to answer the questions, how energy today can be secure, can make economic sense, and how it can be greener and greener.
Absolutely. So maybe, Carmine, let's start with the security angle, because it's quite topical these days. I believe one of the things that the report concludes is that the sort of the near-term pressures that arose as a result of the global energy crisis, and those that particular crisis seems to have eased out a little bit. But yet, there's quite a lot of volatility right now in the energy markets.
Yeah, so probably helping to summarize, Richie. So what are the root cause of this volatility, how this report is looking at it, and how will impact the security portion?
Yeah, there have been so many crises recently that it's a bit difficult to keep track of it. But going back a couple of years with COVID, there was a massive dip in consumption, and therefore all future projects or many of the future projects suffered. And then there was when the demand picked up, there was a lack of supply from new energy projects, right? So that was one crisis leading to a major mismatch in supply and demand. But since then, obviously, we've had a lot of volatility, primarily caused by geopolitical tensions and economic uncertainties, right? So we know about the crisis in Ukraine and Russia. Russia, of course, is a major supplier of energy into the global system. And then there is the recent crisis in the Middle East. Of course, Middle East, as we all know, again, major contributor of resources into the global energy system, which is making the markets quite tense and volatile.
Yes, and probably what we are seeing here that all these geopolitical risks are accelerating. Probably two macro trends. One is the shift towards clean energy. So this with the help with the objective to reducing the dependencies on traditional fossil fuel, but also accelerating the surge towards LNG project as gas. It probably is expected to help us orderly in this transition towards renewables in long run. So how do you see this?
Yeah, so let me take kind of both this part, the aspect of energy security and LNG one by one. In fact, as we know, most of the hydrocarbon-based energy sources are global commodities that travel quite long distances, right? So many countries where they are consumed are not necessarily, these resources are produced. And when there are disruptions in the system, the supply of these fuels starts to come under a lot of threat, right? And that essentially creates the energy security concerns. So if your production sources are not within your own country or close to your own country, there's always this danger of your resource supply coming under threat, right? So that's one part. But specifically related to the challenges with Russia. Russia, of course, probably the second biggest producer of LNG, was the second biggest producer of LNG. Many countries, particularly those in Europe, were dependent on Russia for this for the LNG supply. And as a result of the crisis and sort of the embargo on Russia, that supply has either gone down or has been redirected to other countries, which means that a lot of new LNG projects are being planned, or all projects are undergoing some kind of debottlenecking at this stage. So that is what is causing sort of a major surge in new LNG projects in areas which are more secure outside of Russia. Now, in geopolitics, nothing is secure forever, but currently, that means there are more projects appearing in countries like the US and Qatar.
Yeah. So it's all about the resilience of these clean energy supply chains. So that's it's more resilient, also more flexible, so giving probably a more flexible option than pipelines having LNG moving around. So overall, if we want just to summarize the state of the energy security right now, in this period of transition and uncertainty, so what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly a time of transition from sort of reduction in fossil fuels overall, but going through a bridge of natural gas or LNG. It's a time of uncertainty because the traditional suppliers of or traditional regions which supplied LNG or other energy sources are undergoing changes, and that is allowing the world to change, the energy supply mix in favor of renewable energy sources. So there is quite a lot actually happening, and all that is significantly contributing to the issues of energy security. And of course, there are many other challenges associated with it, which we're going to discuss in the rest of the podcast.
Yeah.
Carmine, is it? I think maybe this is probably a right time to quickly have an overview of the economic angle of energy production and consumption, as is mentioned in the World Energy Outlook report. So let's talk about that now, right? And the first question I have to you is around the cost effectiveness of renewables, right? It's clearly a major topic in the report, but generally I think it's there's a lot of questions around it. So can you help us understand this, what's happening with the cost effectiveness of renewables?
Yes, so definitely renewables are taking a big part there in the report, and rightly so. So we have seen in the last years how they're becoming more and more cost effective, thanks to technology, innovation, and we see significant cost reductions in technology like solar power, solar PVs, and wind energy. Also, investment in clean energy has risen by 40% since 2020. So there is strong economic incentives also pushing on that. There is also one interesting, a couple of interesting data points emerged from that. So if you see the new power installed is massively around in terms of electricity around solar, but also now our daily basis. So the cost of electric vehicles are decreasing, making them now more mainstream. For example, we see that 1 of 5 cars sold in 2023, so this year will be electric, and this was probably unbelievable just a few years back.
And that is certainly very, very, very impressive, right? So all of us know that EV is increasing, but put in those terms, I think helps us sort of appreciate how mainstream EVs have become all of a sudden. And what about the volatility of fossil fuel markets. Is that a concern right now?
So as we were saying before, so definitely renewable energy sources is also attractive because they are probably more stable, less dependent on the volatility that you mentioned before on macroeconomics. Even though there are some consideration on the supply chains. Definitely shifting towards locally sourced renewable energy, this dependence on imported fuel will be mitigated.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, there is all the LNG market that we discussed previously.
Yeah, I think all these big new LNG projects which are coming up, it's certainly easing the energy security concerns, but obviously that might also fuel the inflation side, which is not good, for energy prices. So can we summarize it to say that that the current view is that renewable energy in particular is not just sustainable but also becoming increasingly economically viable?
Definitely, and probably emerge as the one of the strong point of this 2023 outlook. So the economic case for renewables is becoming stronger and stronger, making really an essential part for our energy future.
Yeah. No, that's good. So we've explored sort of the first two dimensions of energy, energy security, and the economic side. But of course, the most important concern, certainly for us, uh, and the word is in the name of the podcast, is sustainability, right? So sustainability is now a crucial part of any energy discussion, and of course it's been mentioned in the report in many significant ways, and that is a big concern right now because the report says that we are seeing global average temperature increases of 1.2 degrees centigrade above industrial periods, pre-industrial levels already, right? And that's a big concern.
Yeah, this is actually what's happening today, and definitely the deployment of clean energy technologies is a key enabler here to limiting global warming. The report also stressed a pathway to the warning of 1.5 degrees of the Paris Agreement, with definitely some challenges that remain open. Now, as I said before, renewables play a key role. They should contribute to, they are already set to contribute to 80%, so 80% of the new power capacity by 2030, with the solar PVs being a major player. This would definitely shift and reduce our reliance on conventional energy.
Right. So I touched upon this earlier, but given the statistics in growth around renewable power that you have mentioned, which are all really eye-opening, are we moving fast enough from traditional sources such as fossil fuels?
So it's interesting to see in the report now some different scenarios, and one of those also is simulating a peak in global demand for coal, oil, and natural gas. And it looks like this will happen before 2030. So indicating that we are really approaching quickly a transition. However, meeting the challenge of limiting global warming, as you said, we're already there at 1.2 degrees, probably will require a more accelerated shift.
Yeah. It's amazing. Not too long ago, the energy industry was debating what was called peak hydrocarbons, right? Peak hydrocarbon supply. And discussion is the same, but now it has shifted to peak hydrocarbon demand. So it's amazing how our energy system has transformed so dramatically in a matter of few years. I think that maybe the last bit to add there, Carmine, is energy efficiency and how enhancing it can potentially help as well. So the report talks about almost doubling the pace of energy efficiency improvements, and certainly for me, it is like a low-hanging fruit, right? Because you're almost getting from the same system more energy by improving efficiency, but not just getting more energy, it's also helping you reduce emissions because your usage is getting better, and therefore you are improving sustainability as well. So those were I believe the three major dimensions discussed in the report. But what I'd like to do, Carmine, is now maybe for the benefit of our audience, kind of quickly look at the major figures in the report in an attempt to summarize what's been presented in the report. Do you want to take that?
Yes. So first takeaway. So report recognized that the global average temperature has already risen by around 1.2 Celsius. So this is alarming, and there is really the urgency of an action there. Second takeaway is that the renewable energy is really picking up. We are looking about 40% increase in clean energy investment since 2020. And renewables sources, as we said before, specific solar, are set to contribute 80% of the new power capacity by 2030. Third takeaway, so there is a projection of conventional fuel in terms of demand. This will peak or should peak before 2030. So we are approaching this peak now. But I think really what we should think, Rishi, looking at this is we have still this limit of 1.5 degrees. And probably we should make an episode on understanding why 1.5, why that limit.
Yeah.
But given that limit, are we still in time? So, or what will take to get there? So, and I think probably the report is also highlighting some of the key action to meet this target or to make it achievable.
Yeah. So from our summary of the data that you just did to the summary of the actions which are highlighted in the report. So first is around the need to triple global renewable power capacity by 2030, right? Which means significant investment in solar, wind, and hydro, and that just in itself has the potential to avoid 7 billion tons of CO2 emissions, which is actually, as big as eliminating all current CO2 emissions from China's power sector, right? So huge potential in renewable power to actually reduce emissions. The second action is around doubling the annual rate of energy efficiency improvements, as I have just mentioned. And of course, the energy efficiency improvement opportunities are available in all sectors, right? All sectors that consume energy. So lots of low-hanging fruits there. The third is around the need to increase sales of EVs and heat pumps. Those of us who live in Europe and probably parts of the United States have probably heard a lot about heat pumps and how various local and national governments are trying to make heat pumps more affordable in various countries. So that's one thing that's been highlighted, and of course EVs. The next one is the need to reduce methane emissions from the energy industry by 75%, right? So methane really for me is the silent killer, because we all talk about CO2, but the greenhouse potential of methane is many times higher than CO2, and therefore urgent action is needed in terms of methane emissions reduction. And then two other points, one around innovative financing. We all know that sustainability or net zero isn't going to be cheap. So making innovative, affordable financing available to various players in the ecosystem is very critical. And finally, an orderly transition from fossil fuels, one that doesn't disrupt, the energy system and therefore the global economy, but still helps us achieve the emission reduction targets we've set for ourselves. So the report suggests that following these recommendations could help achieve around 80% of emission reduction by the end of the decade. Now, what is this 80%? Probably a few ways to define it, but one of the markers is, the need to reduce 7 billion tons of CO2 emissions from 2023 to 2030, right? Which is mainly coming from installation of renewable power in a significant way. And then there are many associated targets, all kind of taking us to a 2030 view and a 2050 view. But instead of dwelling on those targets right now, I suggest, Carmine, we do a separate episode on better defining what these various targets are.
I agree, Rishi. This is very interesting, but also quite a complex kind of topic. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the episode for today on the summary of the energy outlook for the year 2023 provided by the IEA. I hope you found this discussion helpful. Make sure to look up our podcast on Spotify. Sustainability Forward is the name. You can also find it on Google Podcasts, and the LinkedIn page we have is called Sustainability Forward, the podcast. Make sure to subscribe to that LinkedIn page as well. So until the next time, thank you very much. Thank you, Carmine.
Thank you. Have a good one. Cheers.
Take care.